confines of our homes, we often feel safe. But what happens when the terror is right next door? Our homes are our sanctuaries. They are where we retreat to at the end of a long day, where we seek comfort and solace. But sometimes, the walls we trust to keep us safe can become the very things that cage us in with our fears. In our journey today, we will delve into 3 spine-tingling tales of terror that unfolded just beyond the threshold. Our first tale takes us to a house that seems ordinary on the surface but harbors a chilling secret. Next, we'll dive into the shadows where an unseen watcher lurks, turning a peaceful neighborhood into a place of unease. Finally, we'll visit a home where silence is not golden, but a terrifying reminder of the unseen horror residing within its walls. Are you ready to step beyond your front door and into the terror that lurks next door? Let's begin. Our first tale begins with a seemingly ordinary house. But make no mistake, this is not your average 2-story home. Behind its charming facade lies a chilling tale that would make anyone's heart skip a beat. The house, comfortably nestled in a quiet lane, was home to a peculiar neighbor who kept to himself. This unusual neighbor was a man of few words. His eyes, as cold as ice, held a strange glint that made the residents of the neighborhood uneasy. His solitary lifestyle and unusual living patterns dealt an eerie aura around him, building a wall of mystery. Even the postman delivering mails would often find himself shivering, and not just from the cold. The residents of Thee had indeed picked up on an unusual pattern. They often saw visitors arrive at the house, their faces full of anticipation, only to never be seen again. The visitors seemed to just disappear, swallowed up by the house like a monstrous creature. It was as if the house had a voracious appetite for these guests, making them vanish into thin air, never to be seen again. Evenings at the house were particularly unsettling. Strange noises would emanate from within, a faint clinking of chains, muffled screams that sent chills up your spine, and odd scratching sounds that echoed through the desolate night. The curious neighbors, trying to rationalize the bizarre happenings, dismissed these eerie sounds as the house's old age and wooden infrastructure playing tricks on them. However, as the moon claimed its rightful place in the night sky, the house seemed to awaken. Lights flickered on and off in a seemingly purposeful pattern, casting long, terrifying shadows that danced along the quiet lane. The neighborhood dogs would grow restless, their howls adding an ominous soundtrack to the night. The house, it seemed, was whispering its sinister secrets to those brave enough to listen. The local authorities were eventually alerted when the number of missing persons in the town escalated alarmingly. Tracing back the last seen locations of these individuals, all paths disturbingly led to the peculiar neighbor's house. The officers arrived, their hearts pounding with a mixture of anticipation and dread. The discovery inside the house sent shockwaves through the town. The neighbor, it turned out, had turned the once inviting interior of the house into a horrifying maze. The walls were no longer the comforting barriers of a home. They had become the canvas for the chilling tales of the missing individuals, their fates sealed within this horrifying house. The neighbor was apprehended, and the town breathed a collective sigh of relief. Despite attempts to cleanse it of its malevolent energies, the house remained a haunting reminder of the horrors it had harbored. The flickering lights, the strange sounds, the restless dogs, they all continued as if stuck in a perpetual loop of its dark past. The house stood empty, its windows like hollow eyes, forever watching, forever waiting, forever bearing the stain of its dark past. This house of no return, as it came to be known, still stands today, a chilling testament to the macabre that unfolded within its walls. Our next story brings new meaning to the phrase, "watch your back." In the quietest corners of our everyday lives, where routine and comfort build their home, lurks a tale that dares to shatter the illusion of safety. It begins in a quaint neighborhood, the kind where people know each other's names, where children play in the streets, and where a certain neighbor perpetually sat on his front porch, eyes scanning the street. This neighbor, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, distinguished not by his conversation or community involvement, but by his gaze. His eyes, piercing and hawk-like, always seemed to be trained on one house in particular. His stare was not malevolent, nor was it friendly. It was simply constant. Cut to a clip of the protagonist of our story, a young woman living alone. She initially dismissed the neighbor's behavior as odd, but harmless. After all, what danger could there be in a man merely watching? Yet as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the protagonist began to feel an unsettling chill creep into her bones. The camera captures her unease as she pulls her curtains tighter and double-checks her locks, the sense of security in her own home slowly ebbing away. One day, the protagonist found an anonymous note left at her front door. The camera captures the moment she picks up the note, her hand trembling slightly. It was a simple message, scrawled in hurried handwriting. "You're not alone." She scans the surroundings, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. The note was the first of many, each one more unsettling than the last, each one a stark reminder that she was being watched. Eventually, unable to withstand the constant surveillance and growing fear, the protagonist decided to confront the ever-watching neighbor. The chilling confrontation that followed was not one of violence or threats, but of icy revelation. Close-up shots of the neighbor's face revealed the conviction in his eyes as he admitted to the notes, to the watching, claiming it was all in the name of protection. He spoke of dangers only he could see, of shadows lurking where others saw only light. He professed himself a guardian, a watcher in the shadows, protecting the protagonist from unseen threats. Despite his claims of protection, the neighbor's actions had only brought fear and unease. A montage of clips depict the protagonist's decision to involve the authorities, her relief as the neighbor was taken away, his gaze finally averted, his notes stopped. The watcher was watched, the hunter became the hunted, yet the unease never truly left. For in the end, the protagonist was left with a chilling question. What if the dangers the neighbor spoke of were real? What if there truly were shadows lurking in the corners of their safe, comfortable world? A watcher in the shadows may be gone, but the shadows, they remain. Our final episode unveils a tale of unsettling silence, but interpret not silence as an of tranquility. Picture a serene suburban locality, tucked in between a sequence of handsomely designed houses, where a neighbor stealthy as a spectre resided. The residents of this dreamy habitat were oblivious of his existence, except the fact that he was eerily silent. His house, though externally standard, encompassed an extraordinary quietude that was almost tangible, like the walls themselves were trapped in a never-ending deep breath. As the clock ticked and days transformed into weeks and weeks morphed into months, the protagonist of our story started witnessing an array of peculiar anomalies in her own home. Everyday household objects would display signs of displacement, doors would be mysteriously left cracked open, and a bone-chilling sense of eeriness seemed to have woven its way into the house. Despite no evidence of a forced break-in or signs of an intruder, the enigma seemed to ominously swirl around the silent neighbor, who was seen less and heard never. Our protagonist, fueled by the spark of curiosity and an escalating sense of foreboding, started scrutinizing the silent neighbor's premises with intense vigilance. But the house remained ever so quiet, the garden pristine, curtains meticulously drawn, and the silence seemed to have frozen the time within its confinements. The puzzle pieces failed to assemble into a logical picture, leaving the protagonist more bewildered and with more questions than answers. And then, on a severe winter's eve, the revelation of the shocking truth broke the silence. A shrill scream pierced through the quiet night, shattering the tranquility of the neighborhood. Our protagonist, heart thumping in her chest like a drum, bolted toward the source of the sound, and soon found herself standing on the silent neighbor's doorstep. The door was slightly open, and a narrow beam of light spilled out onto the snow-draped path. Taking a hefty breath, she stepped inside. What she discovered within those silent walls was a revelation that would forever cast a shadow over the peaceful neighborhood. The silent neighbor, the man of no words, was not what he seemed. His true nature, concealed behind the heavy curtain of silence, was a monstrous reality that none could have ever fathomed. A ghastly spectacle of insanity and dread, a silent terror that had been in their midst unnoticed. Our protagonist, rattled to her very soul, would remember that night for the rest of her existence. The image of the silent neighbor and his appalling secret was now a permanent scar in her memory, and the neighborhood, formerly a sanctuary of serenity, was now a chilling epitaph of the silent horror that had resided among them. They often say silence is golden, but in this case it was a silent scream. That brings us to the end of our chilling journey. But remember, horror isn't confined to distant haunted houses or misty graveyards. Indeed, the three tales we've uncovered today serve as a stark reminder of this disturbing truth. The House of No Return wasn't a crumbling mansion on a hilltop, but an ordinary home in a seemingly peaceful neighborhood. Yet it harbored an ominous secret that turned a dream home into a living nightmare. Then, we moved on to the Watcher in the shadows. It wasn't a malevolent spirit lurking in the dark corners of an ancient castle, but a living, breathing person hiding in plain sight. The terrifying realization that the monster was just an ordinary neighbor, watching, waiting, is a testament to the fact that horror can be as real as the person next door. Finally, we delved into the silent terror. A tale not of demonic possessions or vengeful spirits, but of an eerie silence that masked a horrifying secret. A reminder that sometimes the most terrifying horrors are the ones that aren't seen or heard but felt. Each story, though unique in its terror, shares a common thread: the unsettling reality that horror can strike anywhere, anytime. It isn't confined to the pages of a horror novel or the scenes of a scary movie. It can be right next door. So keep your eyes open, your doors locked, and always be aware of who's living next door. Until next time.